in the name of our loving and ever-present God. Amen. So I said to Stephanie, first of all, I said, what are you going to be preaching about on Sunday? And her answer was sin. or the love of God or something. I look at this scripture and needless to say, and you all know that I often do wrestle with scripture. And this particular piece of scripture I wrestle with, I guess, at maybe my base level. The widow of Nain, the revivification. I actually said that word. I'm not going to try to say it again. The raising up of the boy, of the son. And then that, of course, harkens back. That's one reason why these two scripture passages are put together, the Old Testament and the Gospel, so that you can see the echoes of the story of the Old Testament in the New Testament. I have trouble with this at a very base level. I want to just show you a couple of books. One of them I've read pretty much all the way through, and the other I've read some of. This is a book about the New Testament. This was written by the head of the Department of Religion at the University of North Carolina, Bart Ehrman. Dr. Ehrman is considered one of the world's authorities on the scripture, and he's written many, many books, not the least of which is one called Misquoting Jesus, which I think if you want to have a good fun time, that's a book for you to read, because the words of Jesus are often used in ways which the persons who wrote the words of Jesus or who heard the words of Jesus, your choice, would wonder how we came to the conclusion we came to. And then this is also by Bart Ehrman. It's called God's Problem: How the Bible Fails to Answer Our Most Important Question: Why We Suffer. Bart started out, or Dr. Ehrman started out as a member of one of the more evangelical type faiths, it's my understanding. And as he came to terms or became more educated and got deeper and deeper into Scripture, he discovered that his faith was changing. And now he is in the position where he identifies himself as agnostic. And I think he would say, I identify myself as agnostic on a good day. That's what this book is about. It's about the question, how is it that people suffer in this world? And then we have this scripture passage where Jesus and his entourage are walking along, and out comes from this little town in Galilee, comes this procession in which the son of the widow has died. And with the death of her son, most of us now have heard me yap on about how the nature of being a widow was a dangerous place. It was a vulnerable place. It was one of the places of weakness in the society those 2,000 years ago in Galilee. The social security net for a widow was her son or her other offspring. And in this instance, this was her only son, and he was dead. So not only did she lose the son, but she also lost any mode or modicum of security in her life. It's a very dangerous place for her to be. And Jesus, approaching, saw this, and in his compassion, he touched the bier which was carrying the body and raised up that son. And there are so many facets of this which I find at an intellectual level interesting. that when Jesus touched the beard, he automatically became unclean. Remember? Touching a dead human body rendered a human being unclean in those days. Nobody seemed to notice that, which I think is a good thing. I don't want us to get hung up in that sort of thing. But as I am standing here today, I wish that I could look into a world where, like on last Thursday, up in the Traverse City area, that when the procession came forward, that Jesus would have walked up and raised up a little child. I wish that that had happened. But the challenge is that it doesn't happen. And that's really hard. That's hard. It's hard for all of us. It's hard for all of us. We don't know what to say, do we? In life, when things really bad happen or when suffering occurs, we don't know what to say. And as my beloved brother said, there aren't any words that work. We don't know what to say. And we are in a situation where, as Christians, we're not without hope. But we wonder, don't we, sometimes, how is it that the God who marks the boundaries of the sea, how is it that we worship a God that can do that, has that kind of power, the power to create a cosmos with all of its phenomenal wonder and wondrous things? How is it that God does not protect us? Or even more, how is it that God does not protect the persons that we love? I think we worry so much less about us, and we worry more about the persons that we love. The widow was not worried about her livelihood when she was walking behind that bier. She was worried about the loss of her son. And yet, as I look at this, see, this is the trouble that I run into. I have an intellectual response to Scripture, but I also have an emotional and a visceral response to Scripture. You all have experienced it. You've heard me argue like a school teacher and bore you to tears with my construct of theology. And you've also seen me in tears because of the emotional content of what the Bible has to say. Like now, for instance. How does it work? How do we pull from this what we need? And the answer, of course, is really clear. I don't know. Bless you. The story itself, this story is actually not intended for me to get emotional about. This story is a piece of Luke's gospel, which is meant to be bound together with what happened before, with this statement of authority in what is called as the healing of the centurion. It's referred to in the first sentence of this little pericope that we have before us. It is meant to define the nature and authority and power and strength of this particular prophet, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. It is meant for us to realize that there is power over even death. There is power over even death in the realm of this person, Jesus Christ. And the whole story of Luke takes us through this most marvelous birth story, birth narrative, to the temple when he's younger. As he grows older, he becomes a minister to the people. And then his ministry is taken away from him by persons who would assume that they have authority over him and over his life. And in fact, the resurrection proves that his authority is even over death. And this is a marker of that. This is one of the markers. This is one of the pointers This is what this is intellectually, I believe, about. And yet it raises a question for me. In my heart, it raises a question for me. How do we, as human beings, march in the light of God towards our end of life, and how do we overcome death? How do we, out of our faith, overcome death? That's a big one. That's a big one. I mean, as I've told you before, I'm in that place in my life where I wonder about that. I'm looking at the end of my life. I'll be 64 in October. I'm looking, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Or as I often say, what do I want to be when I grow up? There's still some debate about that. So what do we do to overcome death? Well, I don't have a square answer for you. I love it when we listen to the talking heads on television. It doesn't matter what channel you listen to. But I love it when a politician will say, well, the reason that this is the way it is because of this one sentence, one thing. The reason that X is the way it is in this world is because of Y. That is just such utter nonsense. It is such utter nonsense to say that in this world, the complexities of life, the things that we wrestle against have one answer. Well, you're not getting one answer from me right now. At least I will be honorable in that sense to whoever I am. How do we overcome death? Well, first of all, we recognize it and we name it. We recognize it and we name it. There it is. And then we start making decisions about how we're going to live our life. How we are going to live our life. One of the most well-adjusted human beings I know is our senior warden. And he and his wife made a determination when they named death in their relationship. When they made that determination and named it, they chose life. And for the length of time that they had, they lived life. So there's a great example. There's a great suggestion. For as long as you live, choose life. As long as you live, choose life. Every single time you get a chance, tell the person that you love, I love you. And we have one of these little boards, you can buy with little sayings on it. It says, always kiss me goodnight. Always kiss the person you love goodnight. If you can avoid going to bed angry, do it. If you can't, cut yourself some slack and know that you're going to work through it. Look into the eyes of the people that you meet and realize that God is creating them. That God is creating them, and that through them they are changing the world. God is creating them to be a unique piece of this cosmos. When you look into their eyes, whether you agree with them or not, friend or foe, God is in them. And God is creating the world through them. Last Sunday after church, I was speaking to one of our young parents. She said, I don't particularly like camping. She said, but I know that I have my family at their ages for a little while. That's a good suggestion for all of us, to recognize that we have each other for a little while. I would suggest we slow down when we get a chance. And here's one that I think is really hard. I understand that this is really hard because I look at you and I know what many of you go through. I'm not walking in your shoes, but I can see it from a distance, however measured and far away that may be. But when you hear bad news, when you get bad news in your life, please, if you can avoid it, don't build that maze of possibilities. Don't have that corridor with so many doors into which you can open, which have other corridors which you can open. And then the next thing you know, you are fearing things which will never take place. Do not do that. Deal with what you have been given. And take it one day at a time. Recognize that in you is God. Remember that. The blossom of life that you have been given is a reflection of a present God in you. And I believe, this is what I do believe, this is what I do believe, that if you can manage to do even these things, or whatever you find in the wisdom of life, you are so much smarter than I am in so many ways. And whatever wisdom you find, if you live into that and recognize the value of the life you have been given, if you do that, I can assure you, I promise you, this I will promise you, that when you leave the city of Nain, Jesus will be there to meet you.